Welcome to Motors and Medicine. On today's episode, I'm going to be discussing protein, what it is, the type of structure it is, how it's made, how it functions in the body, what your daily intake should be, the benefits of protein, a couple examples of what happens if your protein levels are not where they should be, different examples of different types of protein, that sort of thing. So to start, what is protein? Well, protein is basically I want to say like a complex structure made up of chemicals called amino acids. And these amino acids, depending on the size of the protein and where it is in the body, it kind of dictates the length of the amino acid chains and what kind of protein it's going to be and what its function is going to be, just to keep it simple. So there are several amino acids out there, and in and of themselves, protein and its counterparts, the amino acids that make up proteins, can also be energy sources. So from a previous video when I discussed that to have certain like glucose control and fat and cholesterol levels, things like that. Just a quick review: when it comes to calories per gram, fat has 9, alcohol has 7, carbs or sugars have 4, and then there's protein. Protein is also an energy source. It has 4 calories per gram. So it's found in just about everything that we consume for the most part. There are obviously some exceptions to that, but many of the foods that we consume do contain amino acids and proteins themselves. So a protein is used in the body for a number of different reasons. First and foremost, it's found in connective tissues, muscle, bone, and it helps to rebuild tissues that have been damaged. It's also found inside the body in multiple different organs and structures. It helps to bolster the function of cellular flow in and out of the cells, so transport proteins. And there are other purposes for proteins like the creation and formation of hormones in the body. And that primarily takes place in the liver. Proteins are also vital structures in your kidneys and in other major organs. So it's really important to understand that proteins themselves have a huge role in the body. But more importantly, it's important to know that depending on your diet, if you tend to be a person that is either, say, vegetarian, or you eat whatever, or you're vegan, you have to figure out what kind of food your protein is coming from and make sure that you're getting enough protein. There are a number of sources, so there's no one right answer as far as what you're going to consume to get protein. But the key here is just to make sure that you're getting enough protein. So let's first talk about what the adequate or proper amount of protein should be. And a good rule of thumb is to take your body weight and about cut it in half. And so, if you're 150 pounds, half that's 75. So about 75 grams of protein per day is what your body would require for just regular daily function, for cellular function, for rebuilding of tissues, hormone production, etc. There's going to be a little plus and minus to that depending on how active you are, how hydrated you are, which brings up another point. When you're consuming protein, whether it be from your diet or from a supplement standpoint, which we'll get into in a moment, in either case, in either scenario, you need to make sure that you're consuming enough water. And the reason for that is because protein, as I explained, is as an energy source. It's a little bit more difficult to break down protein than it is to, say, break down sugars. And so when you break down protein, it's a little tougher on the kidneys. So you always want to make sure that you're keeping your kidneys nice and flushed and you're drinking enough water and staying hydrated. And that will make sure that your proteins are functioning at their best. One example of a lack of enough protein is somebody who is, like, say, diabetic. So one of the pitfalls of diabetes is that you tend to spill protein in your urine, which I'm sure you've heard from your doctor. That protein that tends to get spilled is usually albumin. Now, albumin is a protein that's very vital for maintaining fluid pressures in and out of cells. So if you notice, a lot of people who are diabetic and they're spilling out a lot of protein, they also tend to kind of balloon up a little bit, and they kind of have a lot of extracellular fluid that shouldn't be there. And that's because albumin is not doing its job regulating what we call oncotic pressure. So that's just an example of how lack of protein can definitely cause some issues. Another example is if you are a competitive athlete and you're not consuming enough or high enough levels of protein, you're not going to be able to rebuild those structures that you tear down on a regular basis during your training sessions, exercise, weightlifting, those types of things. So again, it's very important to remember to be taking in enough protein and then to be flushing that with enough water as a secondary. Now, let's talk about the different examples of proteins. And there are many. I'm just going to list a few here. So some of the basic examples that people are aware of: you can get protein from eggs. You can get protein from lentils, from beans, rice, combined, of course, from animals, beef and chicken, fish. You're going to get protein from vegetables, peas, broccoli is a huge source, quinoa, you name it. So, and then of course, from a supplement standpoint, you can get whey protein, casein protein. Now, it doesn't really matter what protein you're getting for the most part. It's kind of good to mix and match all these different proteins throughout the day, drinking enough fluid, of course. But as long as you're averaging about half your body weight in grams of protein per day, depending on your needs. Now, if you're a competitive athlete, you may need a little bit more than that. If you're a competitive weightlifter, that sort of thing, you're going to probably need more than that. However, if you are, say, a person with a comorbidity like diabetes or peripheral vascular disease or something like that, where you have some kidney compromise, you're going to be consuming a little bit less than your body weight in protein because, like I mentioned earlier, protein is a little bit difficult to break down. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, does it matter whether you're taking most of your protein supplementation from, say, a liquid or a solid? No, it really doesn't. It doesn't matter where you get your protein from, whether it's an animal protein, a vegetable protein, supplement protein, as long as you're getting that protein on a daily basis. Most people really just have no idea how much protein they're consuming, and quite frankly, it's hard to know. So a good resource is just to kind of, and I've made this recommendation in previous videos as well. Take a diary note or a journal, if you will, and journal what you consume, both food and liquid, for a few days, 3-4 days. And then you can kind of go from there. You kind of, after you've written down the foods you eat, you can kind of break that down into what foods were protein, what were fat, what were carbohydrate, that kind of thing. Once you know in general what your protein sources were, you can kind of do some research and find out in general, like let's say you ate a chicken breast for dinner. Well, a chicken breast typically has about 15 to 20 grams of protein, just as an example. Your typical protein shake has anywhere between 15 and 30 grams of protein. Protein bars, which are good and bad. Some protein bars are very clean, meaning they don't have a lot of processing or a bunch of added ingredients, which is what you want. Those protein bars tend to have anywhere between 10 and 30 grams of protein, which is good. However, from a protein bar perspective, you may want to steer clear of some of the higher calorie protein bars that are laden with fat or trans fats. And they have a lot of processing ingredients or chemicals that just aren't good for your body. So keep that in mind. If you're going to be doing a protein supplement, try to find a clean protein supplement. Something that has very few ingredients. Like, I'll give you an example. A protein bar that has very few ingredients would be like an RX bar, okay? I think it's like 4 or 5 ingredients, but it's all just very clean protein sources. So if you're interested in something like that, by all means, get something like that. Now, as I was saying, protein levels, if you focus on the protein source. It's really not going to matter whether you're a vegan, a vegetarian, if you love to eat everything, but just journal what you're eating. And then once you've done that and you figure out how much protein is found in whatever source you've consumed, then you can kind of add it up and just make sure that you're hitting that number of roughly half your body weight. And coupled with that, make sure that you are consuming plenty of water to help flush those kidneys that are helping to break down the proteins. So if this information was helpful, please give this video a thumbs up. And there's a lot of you out there who watch my videos and haven't subscribed. Please subscribe if you get a chance. It'll help the channel grow. But more importantly, I hope that these videos, these tips and tricks on the medical side kind of help you stay balanced with your body and your function. And I hope that you understand that there's a lot of complexities to these things, but I try to make them as simple as possible to understand. And like I said, hopefully this information, you found it useful. And hopefully you'll understand or maybe kind of look at things a little bit more closely when you're considering either a protein supplement or when you're buying foods to track how much protein is found within those foods. And then just keep that in mind. And hopefully you can stay healthy and stay strong. So until next time, this is Motors and Medicine signing off. Appreciate your support.